This is going to be fun, isn't it? Saying that designer X was better than designer Y is basically like me coming in here and telling you that Arsenal are better than Spurs, or that tea is superior to coffee. Backlash awaits. But hey, we love a bit of drama here at GR&R, so let's just go for it. And if you do like this video, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. It really takes no time. Hit that like button, and then subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon, and then you'll definitely see everything from Goodwood Road and Racing. And we'll start by telling you why Lamborghini and Marcello Gandini are forever intertwined. Lamborghini's very existence, its entire history, is completely wrapped up in the design of its cars. They are the most eye-catching. They need to be finished in the brightest colours. The Lamborghini is the car that a child sees on the street and tugs at their dad's hand to stop and look. It near on single-handedly established the wedge as the supercar style de jour. Pretty much every single other company followed its lead. And it owes everything, almost literally, to one man, Marcello Gandini. Like all on this list, Gandini is a man who has risen above his profession. And, even further, remains one of the maybe handful of designers that the odd non-car fan might actually have heard of. From the Miura to the Countach, then to the Diablo, Gandini defined both Lamborghini and what the average person thinks of as a desirable supercar. He's no one-trick bull designing pony though. Gandini's list is incredible. The Bugatti EB110 prototype, the Chisetta Marauder V16T, numerous Maseratis, and even the bonkers Renault 5 Turbo. His pen drew them all and many more. Some of the all-time great cars have slipped from the brain of Marcello Gandini. He is car design royalty. In 1999, Giugiaro was named the car designer of the century. If you want to challenge Gandini as the king of the designers, Giugiaro is a good person to start with. Born just a month before Gandini, Giugiaro was his forebear at Bertone, helping to define the company before Gandini carried on his work. Giugiaro's name spans further across the automotive world and cannot be defined by a relationship with any one marque. He penned everything from special versions of the Ferrari 250 to the iconic Uber wedge that is the Lotus Esprit. At the other end of the scale, his pen brought the world the Lexus GS and the Alfa Romeo Brera. Some of the most memorable cars in motoring history are the work of Giugiaro. And he can be remembered as more than just a designer of great cars. His work spanned outside of the motoring world as well. For years, Giugiaro designed the bodies of cameras for Nikon. He also designed motorbikes and perhaps the greatest accompaniment to a car in the world, watches. Oh, and guns, and a tractor, and a train, and the organ for a Swiss cathedral. Never let it be said that Giugiaro let himself be pigeonholed. Almost bizarrely, all three of the great Italian designers of the 1970s were born within a matter of months of each other. Leonardo Fioravanti was the first, joining the world in January 1938. Fioravanti's name doesn't quite stand as proud from the profession as Gandini or Giugiaro, but that is perhaps unfair. An engineer as well as a designer, he spent his prime at Pininfarina, and in that time crafted some of Ferrari's most iconic shapes. The first road-going, mid-engine Ferrari car of note, the Dino, came into being under Fioravanti's eye. Then the 308, the 328 and the 512 Berlinetta Boxer all followed. But arguably Fioravanti's finest creations were the 288 GTO and then the F40. Sure, kids probably had a Giugiaro-designed Lamborghini on their wall, but if you ask them to draw a supercar, it would look like a 288 or an F40. And in penning those two cars, can we crown Fioravanti the father of the hypercar? Well, we'll let you debate that. Pulling on the handbrake and doing a complete 180, we go from people who designed some of the world's most fantastical, out there, unreachable, dream-worthy cars in history to the man who redefined the automobile. Sure, supercars are beloved, but this is the man who showed that a small, practical, utilitarian machine could be just as iconic, if not more so. Alec Issigonis is the man behind the Mini, and not just in design terms. Issigonis pioneered its transverse engine layout, the genius design that made the Mini able to fit in such slim proportions. It was that piece of engineering that meant the Mini could become such a legend. It isn't all about the Mini, of course. Issigonis was the man behind the Morris Minor and the not quite as genius Austin 1100. But above them all, Issigonis' creation of the Mini will stand out as a car that, quite simply, changed the world. Including Gerard Welter in this list might be a little controversial. But we don't care what you think. Welter was a genius, and that's not just for what he did during work hours, but also the incredible things he created on his alleged days off. Although, seeing how much Welter managed to cram into his life, we're not sure he took days off. On the surface, he designed the Peugeot 205 and 405, two beloved but very much utilitarian family cars. Sure, we love them both, but there's no denying that deep down they're 1980s boxes of the first order. Away from his Peugeot day job, Welter created some completely bonkers machines, ones that were designed with nothing else in mind other than breaking records. In 1988, he was the man behind the self-named WM-P88, a car run by his own team and sort of signed off by Peugeot-ish, which was created purely to be the fastest car ever down the Mulsanne Strait. So single-minded was it on its record attempt, it was never really intended to reach the end of the 24-hour race. Peugeot got involved, fancied a bit of it, and the WM-P88 was given some Peugeot styling, but it was Welter's project overall. It broke the record, and that hasn't been beaten since. And while we have no doubt it did break the record, the fact that it did 405 km an hour just as Welter's 405 was on the market does seem, well, yeah. Gerard Welter doesn't even have a Wikipedia page of his own, but Welter Racing does, and it was still pushing out slightly bonkers designs for Le Mans racing cars in 2008. What is beauty? There's obviously a well-trodden path saying what we think is beautiful, or certain cars from certain manufacturers wouldn't constantly change hands for the GDP of a small country. But one of the best things about the world that we live in is that we can all decide for ourselves what is actually beautiful, and it can be redefined almost constantly. People like William Towns are the ones who choose to try and redefine it, and for that, we applaud them. Sure, his creations have a very similar line running through them, and you have to like one to like them all, but each one remains striking to this day. Towns designed the Aston Martin Bulldog, the one that drew so many eyes at the Festival of Speed presented by MasterCard in 2022. He also penned the Lagonda, a terrible car that remains one of the most recognisable in history. Neither were conventionally pretty, but then neither was the Reliant Scimitar Sabre or the Towns Hustler. But each one is radical and memorable. Gordon Murray may have designed the McLaren F1, and with his steely gaze and obsessive hunt for perfection, made sure its form always followed its function. But it was Peter Stevens who added the details that allowed the F1 to age so well. The kind of minimalism in design from which some modern hypercars could really learn a thing or two. But Stevens' CV is incredible even beyond the F1. Take, for example, the Jaguar XJR15, or the facelift of the Lotus Esprit. Then there's the M100 Lotus Elan, or the 4th generation Subaru Legacy, an understated but handsome machine. In the early 2000s, Stevens was responsible for Rover and MG's design. It's easy to forget that, even as the company fell apart, in design terms, Stevens was producing some excellent machines. And to showcase his variety of skills, that includes both the refined Rover 75 and the bonkers MG X-Power SV. Before we move on from Peter Stevens, we'd just like to say thank you very much for watching this video. We really do appreciate it. We're not just saying that. And, you know, if you do like it, hit the like button and remind that there's that bell icon and all the other stuff, and then, you know, I'll shut up. And I'll tell you about the man who designed almost everything at Volkswagen. He has a name you perhaps may not have heard of, but one that's an integral part of the modern day design world. Names just don't stand proud today as they did in the days of those great design houses. You can be as incredible a designer as the world has ever seen, but you're now sat inside a corporate machine, and the credit will come out among thousands of different names. But one of the advantages of that corporate machine is the chance to work on an incredible variety of machinery. And Luke Donckerwolke's catalogue of designs is truly broad. At the turn of the century, he penned the revolutionary Audi A2. 4 years later, he sketched the Lamborghini Gallardo. 2008 brought the Seat Ibiza, and 2013 the Bentley Continental GT. We're pretty sure he was probably never bored. We can't imagine any more daunting shoes to fill than those of Marcello Gandini, and Donckerwolke had to do that when he designed the Murcielago. And did he fill those shoes to perfection? Oh yes. He's still at it too. Having left the comfort of the Volkswagen Group, Donckerwolke can now be seen overseeing the design of Hyundai and Genesis cars, and in the process has transformed Hyundai from a making of uninspiring white good cars into desirable, eye-catching machines. His name deserves a place in the pantheon. Being a world-famous designer has its ups and downs. You can either be feted as one of the great styling works of automobile art that are right now in the Guggenheim Museum, or you can be Chris Bangle in the early 2000s, constantly being attacked for basically single-handedly ruining BMW and everything it had ever stood for. Bangle's 7 Series, Z4 and 5 Series and all the rest were all controversial, all hated by many in both the media and at home, but, dare we say it, also well ahead of their time. Age has been extremely kind to these cars, except the 7 Series. You don't get away with that one, Bangle. At the time, the E65 series was described by one person as having Dame Edna Everidge's spectacles. But now, it looks elegant, it's stylish, it's refined. Bangle's designs may not have worked too well at the time, but like all the best designers, they work now, in the future. And no matter what was said at the time, it was Bangle's BMW that pushed ahead of Mercedes in global sales. BMW is at it again today, making designs that draw absolute fury. Will these ones follow the Bangle path of redemption? We're not so sure. Ian Callum may be the exact opposite of Chris Bangle. Far from courting controversy, Callum harnessed objective beauty to create designs that were adored even at their time. Take the Aston Martin DB7, Jaguar's 2006 XK, the Vanquish, the DB9 or the F-Type. Quite possibly the most beautiful cars of the last 20 years. And you could argue that designing such sports cars or supercars to be objectively pretty is, well, pretty straightforward. But the rest of Callum's catalogue will show that he is no one design pony. Out of the mind of Callum came the F-Pace, one of the first SUVs to actually look like something we wanted. Then, the quirky I-Pace, an EV that wasn't just about being weird, or even further back, the stunning Ford Puma sports car, and the RS200. Callum is absolutely one of the all-time greats. Okay, so Welter de Silva hasn't designed the standout cars that some who have been left off this list have. But the sheer breadth of what de Silva oversaw is impossible to overlook. At Alfa Romeo, he gave us the stunning 156 and 166 and the 147. Then he moved to Seat for the 2002 Ibiza and the understated 2005 Leon, but it was at Audi in 2003 where he really kicked off his career. At the time, Audi just made, it made cars. They looked like cars, they drove like cars, they did everything a car should do, except inspire. But then, Welter de Silva walked in the door, reintroduced the upright grille, created the A5, the Q7, and among all, used the R8 supercar to transform Audi's image from makers of cars to makers of cars. And then, promoted to oversee design at the whole Volkswagen Group, he gave us the stunning Lamborghini Miura concept, the Sirocco, and the Up. Frank Stephenson might be a YouTuber today, but his actual métier is to create some of the most beautiful cars the last 20 years have seen. But the significance of even the Maserati MC12 or his McLaren P1 are completely overshadowed when you realise that Stephenson also designed the new Mini and the Fiat 500. Between them, these two cars have defined what small cars look like on our roads for the last 20 years. And, as if to deliberately stride across our modern automotive landscape, Stephenson styled the original BMW X5, A car that didn't so much rewrite the rulebook for how we bought cars, but completely rip it up. All of Stephenson's designs are either extremely cool, extremely significant, or both. Those are 12 designers that we think are among the greatest of all time, but it's not an exhaustive list. You know that. We know that. We know we've left things off. We know you're about to get annoyed about them. We know it's Pininfarina. Just go to the comments now and let us know. We'll be there waiting for you.